introduce themselves. As I mentioned before, I'm Eileen Taylor. Start, thank you.
Good morning everyone, I'm Councillor Nicole Lloyd from Leeds City Council.
Councillor Andrew Carter, Leeds City Council.
Morning, Councillor Fazal from Calderine Council.
Morning, Councillor Jack Ferguson from Wakefield Council.
Good morning, Gwen Page from Wakefield Council.
Good morning, I'm Jo Sykes, I'm one of the panel independent members.
Fiona Bernardo, Policy and Partnerships Officer at Wakefield Council.
Rush Hughes, West Yorkshire Police.
Catherine Hankinson, Deputy Chief Constable, West Yorkshire Police.
Alison Lowe, Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, West Yorkshire. Wendy Stevens, Research and Performance Manager for the Combined Authority.
Trevor Lake, Independent Member. Councillor Anthony Smith, Kirklees.
Councillor Gwen Lowe, Kirklees. Councillor Brenda Monteith, Calderdale Council.
Councillor Chris Hayden from Bradford Council.
Councillor Nusrat Mohammed, Bradford Council. Sharon Fraser from Wakefield Council, Legal Advisor to the panel.
And Samantha Wilkinson, Police and Crime Panel Officer.
Okay, thank you all, and also thanks members that are sitting up in the gallery. And also just to highlight that this is webcast, it can be watched outside or go back at any time to watch it. So, first is any apologies? No apologies. Minutes from the previous meeting that ended on the 7th of March. Take it all members have read the minutes. Are there any comment? No? We're all happy with it. Thank you. Urgent item, I've got no urgent item. And item 3, item 4, member declaration of interest. This is the chance members have to declare their interest. Is there anything to declare? No. Item 5. Appeal report update. Can I hand over to the Deputy Mayor, Alison Lowe? Thank you. Try it together.
Thanks very much. So the panel asked for a further update on the last key inspection, and we're happy to be able to produce what I think is a substantial report into work that West Yorkshire Police are currently undertaking. We did meet with West Yorkshire Police within a month of the Peel inspection being reported last year, and then since then we've developed some governance arrangements around the peer inspection progress and how the police are responding to those AFIs in particular. And so Wendy sits on the group that meets regularly to talk about the work that's being undertaken. We also talk about the peer inspection AFIs and progress being made in our various governance meetings, which are all captured in this report. And then additionally, there are other HMIC reports that are done, some thematic reports, some reports that we're then asked to respond to, and again we've made some reference to that in the paper so that you see that it's not just the main HMIC report that we respond to all the thematic reports as well. And then just finally to say that HMIC is coming again next year, so the prep work is starting now, as I understand it. So HMIC are already in communication with West Yorkshire Police, and I think they're coming, is it June, July? Yeah, July they're coming?
Next year?
Next year.
No, they'll be here early next year.
Early next year, yeah. So, but we'll probably know by July. So the prep work has started already, which I think is positive. So I'm really happy to answer any questions.
So, okay. Starting off the paper, Alison, we've noticed there was 18 areas of improvement spread across all estates. So there was some down, but we've noticed that it's kind of picking back up as you go along. Would you elaborate on what you are doing to make sure all these work are happening and going ahead? But there was supposed, there's some areas that need improvements in the report.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when HMIC comes into force and identifies areas for improvement, that's the concern for the Mayor and I, and we want to see what the police are doing in response to those AFIs. But we also needed to understand at a really granular level some of the detail sitting behind that. We also also wanted to understand some of the performance of other forces, because there was not always agreement about all the AFIs, for example. So we had a really detailed half a day with West Yorkshire Police and went through all the report and understood where West Yorkshire Police were, and also where we wanted to focus our attention. And obviously the AFIs were clearly the best starting point. So, as I say, Wendy attends the regular internal West Yorkshire Police governance meetings that oversees progress against these AFIs, and they form part of our governance meeting. So, for example, we had a quarterly governance meeting last week where all 18 of those AFIs were incorporated into the report, and we asked questions on all 18 of those AFIs to get reassurance about various elements. We don't ask about every single bit because it was a very long meeting. We were there for 3 hours. And so we could be there for a whole day if we went through everything in lots of detail, and our job is high level scrutiny to get that assurance, but we were given the assurance about the resources that have been put into place to make sure that the work is ongoing, and then we do some some testing of some of the detail of that work from time to time. We get reports back from Wendy about areas of where there are some barriers or where there might be some difficulty making progress, and then we feed that into our questioning, into our scrutiny. So the Mayor and I's governance of performance, I think, is robust. But at the end of the day, HMIC will determine whether or not that progress has been made when they come early next year.
I'm sure you'll agree with me, Alison, 75% complaints of ethnicity was very high.
I can't hear you say that again.
Sorry, you'll agree that 75% complaints for ethnicity was high. Are you addressing that?
Which point? Which page?
I'm reckon West Yorkshire Police still need to improve this record data. Quality
Yeah,
data.
so maybe along the part, would be really good if you could tell me where is it? 3.1?
2.3.
4.3?
2.3.
I think the high is 75 is compliance. So I think it being 75%, there's obviously improvements to be made, but we're on the right track with 75% is compliance.
Yeah. So and just to point out that actually the requirement to begin to capture this data has come quite recently, and so West Yorkshire Police is actually making some good progress to get that data captured. Lots of the forces are nowhere near being able to capture that data, and in fact one of the AFIs was given because West Yorkshire Police collected a lot of data and nobody else did, so we got an AFI for collecting the data, which meant that the analysis meant that we weren't doing something. I can't remember what it was, but nobody else collected that data, so they didn't get an AFI. So we're collecting a lot of data, sometimes to our detriment, but they're actually making good progress on what is quite a recent requirement to collect data on protected characteristics. Wendy.
So just on that, as you know, West Yorkshire Police uses the niche crime system. They don't control what's collected in the system. That comes from national companies. So it's Minerva is the company that owns this, and there's quite a few forces that are part of it. So it needs agreement from all the forces to be able to change how they collect things. So some of the things that they want to change isn't in their remit to be able to do. It has to come through Minerva, the parent company for the crime recording system.
Yeah, and that work's happening now. So the NPCC is working with that parent company to get the right metrics for all forces, and so when that comes, we'll be even better at collecting this data.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, could I perhaps, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
What we do have data on though is gender, age and ethnicity. And we're even better in terms of age and some of our safeguarding victim-based data that we collect. So, like I said at the beginning, there is still a journey to go on, but I think we're 75% there, and we're also looking at whether we can automate some of that as well. so that if we've got victim information from perhaps a previous encounter with the police, that data is automatically pulled over in the system as opposed to having to be put in manual, which again will increase that data compliance. So hopefully that helps to understand that AFI a little bit better.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Trevor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just picking up on the points around 15 and 16, and it's good to see that the work going on in reducing the workload and rather than additional support, so really that's ongoing, really monitoring and keeping an eye on that. And I want to just come particularly my questions around 17 about PDRs. So it looks like there's some work going on in the background by ACC CALM around reviewing the existing system or existing actual PDR. At the same time, PDR reset is going to happen, so it's going to move to a fixed window, so once a year. So does that mean that it will be another 12 months before they're done, or would everybody have one in April, May, June?
Yeah, of course. So yes, we've done the reset. So what happens then is, so everybody now has a new PDR, and those objectives, the force objectives, will be set. It'll be each line manager is then required every 3 months to have a meeting, so an IDM, an individual development meeting with their members of staff, and then at the end of that 12 months, they'll have their first sort of reset PDR, if you like, where they'll review that last 12 months to see whether those objectives have been achieved, and then that line manager write-up will go on there.
So if I've got this right, then people are not going to have a PDR now until April 26.
Well, people will have had a PDR up until now, so it's still a rolling programme.
It was a rolling process, wasn't it? It was on the anniversary.
It was on anniversaries,
on your anniversary?
Yeah, that's
okay,
right.
so if my anniversary was June last year,
yes,
I now will not have a PDR until April next year.
you won't have a fully written up PDR. What you'll have is objectives set, so you'll know your direction of travel for the year ahead. You'll have regular IDMs with your line manager, and at the end of that 12 months, you'll have a write-up to see what you've achieved in that 12 months.
So I think you're going to have a big gap there. People are not going to have a PDR. Maybe even it takes a 3-month window, April, May, June next year, when they do the PDRs. I'm guessing that's when you're having them for April, May, June. It normally used to be a 3-month window to allow them to be done. So potentially you've got HMR, FRSE coming in next year, in early in the year, and they're going to say a lot of people haven't had a PDR done.
Well, we've done this in conjunction with, so HMIC FRS know that this is what we're doing, so in response to the AFI, a lot of the things that the officers told us that were hampering them and blocking them in terms of how the PDR system was set up, these new, the changes that we've made have streamlined that, and then the reset has been done, so HMIC know that we're doing that. So they shouldn't, we've got the data, and they shouldn't come back to us and say there's a gap, because they understand that we've done the reset, and we've done it for all the reasons in terms of listening to feedback from the staff.
Yeah, I heard that same argument probably 4 or 5 years ago when it moved from an annual one because people didn't have time to do it to one on the anniversary, which, you know, unfortunately now we're going back to how it used to be. So,
but the difference is now, of course, that they're meeting quarterly and having these individual development meetings, which I think it's about how you term the performance meetings, isn't it? So they're doing the quarterly reviews, and then annually have a look back and see what went well, what didn't go well, and then they'll reset in terms of right, what's for next year, and then they'll do the quarterly individual meetings again. So in a way, it's an ongoing process, and it's an iterative process, and it's every quarter. It's not an annual right. Don't have anything for 1 year.
yeah,
In a way, it's a lot better for staff.
It should be like that anyway, shouldn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what I think. That's what I did when I was chief exec. Yeah.
So how assured are you that there's a mechanism in place? Because it was pretty scathing in the report last time about that the new system was described as ineffective, and only, I think at the end of March 23, only 74% of the workforce have had an annual performance assessment. So if you're depending on this quarterly mini review as part of the ongoing process, how assured are you that you've got the necessary checks and balances in place to make sure that happens, and we don't end up having a report next year in 26 saying that didn't happen?
Yeah. So the assurance that we've been given is that this new process has been co-produced with the HMIC FRS. The test of that will be when they come in January and tell us that's no longer an issue because the process has been agreed with us and we like it. It's working for officers that we've spoken to. They've now got a plan, they know what they're doing. They've got a direction of travel, they're getting feedback. It's all working well. Or it's rubbish and it's worse than it was last time or as bad as it was last time. So the test is going to be HMIC because they've been involved in the co-creation of this new system. And so that's the reassurance that Tracy and I have had, that HMIC are happy with this new system. The test will be when they come back in January.
Yeah, I think it's for us to develop this system. It's not for HMIC. It's for us to tell HMIC what we're doing to achieve the AFI. I think the important thing, the thing that you're asking in terms of the assurance is, we have data to understand how many have been completed and the governance process is in place via the local accountability meetings and the monthly force accountability meeting.
Which we get.
Where I will hold district commanders and departments to account for how many of their PDRs and IDMs are being done on a 3-monthly and then eventually a 12-monthly basis. So we've got the data and it's up to me and the other ACCs to hold the district commanders and the department heads to account for that information and performance moving forward. Because as you say, you know, these, whether it's a sit down on a monthly basis or a more formal 3-monthly written down IDM, those are the things that are important so that staff understand what direction they're going in, what support they've got, and that they feel valued and supported at work. So absolutely we'll hold them to account for that.
Okay, so the mechanism is that you've got a reporting mechanism that you know how many of these 3 monthly IDMs are being held. Because I don't think it should be dependent upon an inspection next year to say whether they've been
No, but your assurance is whether or not HMIC FRS come next year and say, well, we'll say nothing about this because it's not an issue anymore. If they come back and say it's a problem, then everything we've just said to you is not working, is it?
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate test for you as to whether or not what we're saying, what I've been told and what Tracy's been told, whether it is working.
So maybe it might be helpful for us then as a panel, rather than have to wait for that, to get an interim report for yourself. If you've got the data on the completion of IDMs, maybe in 6 months' time, at which point there should have been 2 rounds, so it shouldn't be 6 or 8 months' time, something like that. Is that okay?
And we were going to give you some PDR data, and I think it just got dropped off the work agenda. So I did speak to us about that a couple of days ago, so that they know that they need to do that.
Okay. And so just to finish off on it, just go back. So the work that ATC Khan is doing was around improving the actual PDR process, because that was this pretty scathing report that came out, didn't it? That it was too complicated, it was causing a lot of stress, difficult to use. That work's happened, has it?
It has. It's happened.
That's been simplified.
It's been simplified, it's been streamlined, there's been some really good comms, lots of focus groups, and it went live on the first week of April, and we're on with it. I've been in the system myself, it's much more streamlined than it was.
Okay. So the actual paperwork, so the documentation has been streamlined, and it's now just a matter of monitoring the system that they've actually
and the compliance of it actually happened.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Can I refer to page 6, bullet point 11, which refers to West Yorkshire Police needing to make sure it's got sufficient staffing, processes, on and on, to deal with domestic violence disclosure, child sex offence disclosure. And my point is this: given the announcement this week, first of all from the Minister, Jess Phillips, and then from the Secretary of State, Elect Cooper, effectively scrapping the 5 local inquiries that were promised into grooming. The further statement, which is where my concern comes in, came yesterday from the Home Secretary, implied that they were now looking at a more refined model of inquiry, actually involving not an independent inquiry, but the police making further investigations over and above they would make already. Where's the money coming from for that? Because that impacts number 11. Because it seems to me that there is an extra burden to be placed on the police. Are we making representations to government about the appropriate funding of that? Because the Home Secretary made it very clear yesterday that it was going to be a police matter, not an independent. Now, we could argue day long about whether there should be independent national inquiry or local inquiry. We'll all have our views on that. I've got mine. That's what the point I'm making today. The point I'm making is that will impact on that point in this report unless there are extra resources. So I wouldn't mind comments from yourself and from the Deputy Chief Constable.
So as you know, here in West Yorkshire we've got a dedicated CCA unit, and that unit has been funded by the Home Office for many years. It's been tapered down over the last few years, and we were at 45% of government funding for that unit. I think it's about 6 million it costs us to deliver. I'm really pleased to say that Tracy and I wrote to the Home Office a couple of months ago, outlining some of the fantastic work that West Yorkshire Police has been undertaking in that unit since 2015, the fact that 208 perpetrators have been sentenced to 2,300 years since 2015, and asked if they would consider uplifting the special grant that they give for that special unit. And she has agreed to now fund it at a rate of 65% rather than 45%. So we were already outstanding at the investigations that we undertake in that unit. I think us and GMP have got the best numbers in terms of pursuing and prosecuting this kind of perpetrator. And so I don't think, I don't know what you're actually referring to with I think I heard what she said yesterday, and I don't remember her saying very much about policing, but here in West Yorkshire we have got a dedicated resource. The funding has been uplifted, and that was done after the budget setting, so there is some capacity there, and I'm confident that West Yorkshire Police will continue to do the brilliant work that it has been doing since 2015.
Sorry, Chair, if I may come back on that. The Home Secretary yesterday was very specific on policing and inferred that the £5 million that was being earmarked for the inquiries was still there to be used.
4 million, because Oldham's got a million.
5 million it was.
Yeah, Oldham's got a million.
And implied, well said, no, it actually said that they were looking at more police involvement and more police inquiries, which implies the resources would hopefully come to the police. And what I'm trying to establish is that it does, because if not, when HMRC come back next year and they look at that point again, you'll be under further pressure.
Yeah, so we've already got additional resources for investigations to take place. I'm not aware that the Home Secretary said that the police would be involved in any inquiries. That's not their remit, that's not their role. But obviously I'll go back and have a look at what
It would be helpful if you did.
Yes, actually, is there anything you wanted to add?
Nothing in terms of the Home Secretary's comments, but perhaps just coming back to 11.1, and just to reassure you really that those two things are quite separate. So 11.1 is very much about individuals or families' right to know or right to ask when they are concerned about somebody's behaviour from a domestic abuse and a vulnerability point of view. And the point that the HMIC were making at the time was that there were a number of backlogs whereby we were telling people, but not in the timescales allotted. We've made improvements since then, and part of the requirements to make improvements in this area was about, could we actually see the data very visibly in terms of what was outstanding, and we can now, which then helps us obviously on a day-to-day basis to understand when these things are tipping to becoming overdue, and we can make sure that people are told.
Is there any other question? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Alison, I'd like to go back to point 16, please. And 16.1 refers to a reduction in officers being identified in a role which is considered high risk. So my question really is around whether you have an indication of the quantum of that reduction and whether you are assured that the safety net measures which are being proposed are going to be adequate to make sure that officers are not actually being looked after in the correct way.
Yeah. I mean, clearly this is an area that we regularly hold the police to account on. I've got a mental health background. I'm very conscious of the very difficult role that police officers have talked about, the 200 or 300 traumas that police officers experience compared to the general public, which is about 2 or 3 on average. And so we wanted to make sure that West Yorkshire Police has got the right mechanisms in place, both for identifying those officers at most risk and then putting things in place for all officers, including those officers who have been identified as being at most risk of harm from the work that they're doing for West Yorkshire Police. Obviously, it's not an exact science, and some of it relies on officers themselves being forthcoming and being open. It's a really macho area of work, and some officers might not feel comfortable to be open about their mental health, and that's why the culture work that West Yorkshire Police has been undertaking is also an important element, so that staff know that it's okay not to be okay, and that they'll be safe to talk about their mental health and well-being. So there are so many different processes and procedures in place. What I felt in the beginning was that there was too much. It was really confusing for officers and for line managers to know what pathways to refer people into. I speak to ACC Oscar on a regular basis, and I met him last week, and we did again talk about health and well-being. And they've been doing a lot of work on developing pathways. They've got an external provider helping them to be much clearer about the offer. They've reduced the number of activities that they offered because it was ridiculous. There were so many things, and it was so confusing that it became problematic. There's obviously been learning from some of the coronial processes that have taken place, and from feedback from staff and the annual staff survey that's undertaken. So I am as satisfied as you can be that West Yorkshire Police is much clearer now about how it identifies those staff who are at risk, how it supports those staff, but how it supports all its staff and the pathways that it's put in place. These individual development meetings, I've been saying to the Chief Constable, need to include health and well-being as a regular check-in with officers. It can't be that you're relying on incidents before you ask people how they are. There's always a check-in after there's an incident, but we need to be having these ongoing conversations. Things might be happening at home that the force don't know about, for example. So this is definitely something that I raise on a very, very regular basis. We also speak to a lot of police officers, so I go out and about a lot with officers, but we also have got a whistleblowing function, and we've got the ability for staff to tell us what's going well with West Yorkshire Police and what's not going well. And then we use that then to reflect back to West Yorkshire Police the reality for officers, and to encourage some better workplace practices. And I know, for example, that they've just gone out to tender late last year for a new provider for wellbeing support, for mental health support, and some of the lessons of the previous 12-18 months from coronial processes, from some of the feedback we got. I know that was then, that informed that procurement process, and I was really happy to see that informed that procurement process, and I had quite a lot of involvement in the wording of some of that to make sure that we were not in a similar position to the one we've been found in before. Having said that, there's 11,500 police officers and staff. It's really, really hard to monitor people's health and well-being and mental health on an ongoing basis. We do rely on staff and officers to also feel safe to come forward. It's a big piece of work, but it's one that I'm dedicated to continuing, because for me mental health and wellbeing is my number one consideration, and our police officers and staff, they're doing such tremendous work out there under the most difficult circumstances, and we have to have their backs. Catherine, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think just in terms of specifically the psychological assessments that's referenced in 16 here, over time, I think we've got things now, take us back a few years, there's a national list which includes all of the things that you'd expect it to do in terms of the very high risk roles, which are things that I'm sure we could all think about. And over time, in an effort to provide more support to our officers, we'd added some extra roles onto that. I think that filled a gap for time, but what that does mean is that the more people you add, when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And I think what the HMIC were trying to tell us is that we're actually really good at the people who fill in the psychological assessment, who clearly need real help and psychological help, get it. There's a group of people who feel generally stressed, if you like, not because they need necessarily specific psychological help, but it might be workload and day-to-day life and busyness of being a police officer and what they see, etc., etc. It's a cumulative impact, if you like. And those people didn't perhaps need the psychological support, but needed other wellbeing support, which we pointed them to. And as the Deputy Mayor says, there was such a myriad of that perhaps it was quite a confusing landscape. So we've streamlined that, and we also now have got to a point where, because we've reduced the list, we make contact now with those people in the middle, if you like, to make sure that they do know where they can be signposted to if they need to. And there is still an ability for the people that don't get the psychological assessment proactively given to them, that if they feel that they need that, they are still able to link into it and complete it. I think also if I just point to 16.3 there, in the meantime, we have this trauma tracker, which we are sort of piloting and rolling out bit by bit to different places in the organisation, which tracks that cumulative trauma that I've spoken about. So sometimes there are very obvious incidents, of course, where we have to wrap our arms around people because it's been a traumatic incident. Sometimes it is just the cumulative impact of multiple things that happen that gradually weigh on people. And that trauma tracker is a way of identifying the incidents that people go to try and put interventions in early to keep people on an even keel. Does that help?
Yeah, it's really useful additional context and narrative. I think that's reassuring for the panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Just to come back on that, going back to the report here, there's an issue there around an expectation on people to do overtime, and then the officer taking work home, not claiming overtime for it, just to try and keep on top of their workloads. Can you just update us on sort of how sure you are that something's being done around that process? Because you mentioned about the culture of, it takes time to change, but what's happened as a result of that report that might be different now?
So at the quarterly governance meeting last week, we were given some quite in-depth information about how workload has been reduced for officers and various mechanisms that the police have introduced to manage that workload, and obviously expectations that people take stuff home. There is no expectation that people take stuff home, but obviously people are so dedicated that they want to do a good job, and so it is about creating that culture where people know what the boundaries are and how to keep themselves well. So yeah, we've got a really detailed update about how the workload management stuff has been developing, obviously using some digital, but also some of the new police officers that are coming through. We're going to have another 100 police officers here in West Yorkshire, which I think will also be a help. But I think it has been about how West Yorkshire Police has reviewed all the workloads and made some different decisions about how that's allocated. Catherine, do you want to add any more to that?
I think I would just add that, as always with these issues, they're multifaceted. It's not one thing that we can do that then just reduces workloads all of a sudden, because ultimately you know, the public of West Yorkshire ring us and there is demand that we need to deal with. So we can't just take workload and decide to, you know, to not do a particular thing. So, you know, there are a number of things. As the Deputy Mayor says, we have much more detailed over the last 12 to 18 months, much more detailed individual and team level data about workloads as opposed to averages across teams, which sometimes can hide some high workloads for individual officers if we average things out. So we've got that data now, and therefore we're able to really focus in on a weekly basis on those officers to make sure that we can. Sometimes it is about inexperience, sometimes it's because an officer might be understandably holding a lot of link crimes together, and that's absolutely appropriate. So there's lots of different reasons why somebody might flag as having a high workload, and we need to get to the bottom of understanding and making sure that when people are feeling overwhelmed and the workloads are too high, that there is good supervisory support and good data to enable us to intervene. So workloads have been coming down. There are certain areas where, understandably, we're in volume crime areas where the volume is higher, just because of the throughput of the crime that comes through. And it's those areas that we're specifically concentrating on, and that's very much linked into that well-being offer as well.
Okay. Jeff?
Could I just briefly touch on item 12, please, which is around secondary risk assessment for domestic abuse. And Alison, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that everything is being done to make sure that that's aligned.
Yeah, thank you. So because we've got the Women's Safety Unit, we've now got a direct line into some of the operational policing that maybe we didn't have before. Probably days, Catherine. And so where that Women's Safety Unit sits on the Domestic Abuse Gold Group and is supporting the development of the new Domestic Abuse Tactical Plan, and is also bringing the good practice from all the opposite area work that has been happening nationally and here in West Yorkshire to domestic abuse. And so I know, because I get regular feedbacks, I meet the Women's Safety Unit quarterly to get an update, get a written update, and domestic abuse is part of that. So even though domestic abuse is part of the safeguarding function, we've got that bridge into domestic abuse now. So I'm aware of all the detail around the governance of domestic abuse, the way that West Yorkshire Police has changed some of its practices. So for example, Rapid, which I think we talked about last time, where victims are visited within an hour, which is not always good if they've been at 2 o'clock in the morning and they don't want you to come, but anyway, that's another matter. And so all that good practice that the Women's Safety Unit has been developing through the RASO architecture is being transferred across to domestic abuse. But because we're on that gold group and we're feeding in, we're also hearing about what's happening, what isn't working well, what is progressing. We've now got more information and more assurance than we've ever had, to be honest. And obviously we also have a safeguarding report to COM. So our last COM that was live streamed from this room a couple of months back, Paula Bickerdike, who is the Detective Superintendent, gave us an overview of the work that they're doing, which including feeding back on the AFI for domestic abuse that was referred to in the report. And again, they're really focused on making sure that the things that have been highlighted are being addressed, but using that good practice from opposite area, which I think is really helpful. I should say the Women's Safety Unit has got 2 overarching ambitions. One is around improving investigations, the other is about improving risk assessments. We've now got a new risk assessment that obviously has been developed nationally, the DARA, so we're very interested in how West Yorkshire Police is implementing this new DARA risk assessment. It used to be the DASH, which was criticised by some national Women's Aid and other women's organisations. So the DARA is a new way of trying to bring in as much information as possible to get that risk assessment right first time. So because that's an area of focus and expertise for the Women's Safety Unit, again, we're bringing that to domestic abuse. So we're on a journey, clearly, but we are happy that the governance is now in place to pick up areas of progress, but areas of that are problematic as soon as possible. So Tracy and I will know about that on a quarterly basis because we meet the Women's Safety Unit every quarter.
That's good to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could you bring this item to close? Thank you. Moving to item 6, Parliamentary Electoral Council. Thanks very much.
Yeah, so this is just the annual update on the work of the Violence Reduction Partnership. It's been a really busy year. As we reported at the last meeting, we've been told that we're going to get the same level of funding for 25-26 as we did last year, so that's 4.3 odd million, which is great, and we're already working with local authorities around how that money is going to be spent, taking account of the new government direction in relation to prevention partnerships and then also youth hubs. So that's how we're focusing going forward. But this report talks about the last 12 months and some of the successes that we've enjoyed, and I'm really happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. The first one is Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. It's just really for some additional narrative and context around Forum in the Future Delivery, which talks about the transition, I believe. Yeah, next year is one of transition, pivoting from the VRUs to the VRPs. And just what you think maybe the risks or opportunities, and anything the panel needs to be aware of in terms of keeping an eye on this.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Clearly, we are in a state of flex at the minute because the VRPs have been told that they've got 12 months for funding, and there's no guarantee that we'll be funded next year in the same way, which is why we're trying to be strategic and creative so that we are funded on an ongoing basis, because we know that we need to now fit this new policy decision of government to deliver both the prevention partnerships and the youth hubs. The slight risk for us is that youth hubs will be funded through education. That money won't be coming to us, although we are trying to influence that. I was in a meeting with the Home Office 2 days ago where I pointed out to them that it'd be good if the mayors could actually channel that money to education rather than it going directly to education, because we've got such diversity of offer. You know, you've got your free schools, your academies, your local authority schools. So the leadership could be lost, and I gave an example of where that had been the case with NHS GP funding, for example. So hopefully they'll listen. But so I don't think that's a risk if it goes to education and it doesn't have that overarching governance and leadership from the Mayor or the PCC. But what we're doing in West Yorkshire is we're preempting what we think the policy development will end up with in terms of the prevention partnerships. So we're talking to the 5 local authorities. We have in January spoken to the 5 local authority partnerships and said, can we, instead of just giving you the money we always gave you to combat knife crime, can we now set up youth hubs in your areas and pilot those and see what works, test the model, and then when we do our feedback back to the Home Office, we can say, we think that you should follow our model and create the youth hubs in this image, because we think that this is what's working. So we've already got agreement in Leeds and Kirklees for some delivery partners to deliver the youth hubs there. We're still talking to the other areas about what's best for them, because it's all got to meet their local need. We're talking to local authorities about the activity that the youth hubs will deliver. So the prevention partnerships, I chair the Serious Violence Executive. That's going to morph into the prevention partnership because it has to be set up by the end of April. And then what we'll do is we'll oversee the activity in the localities, primarily funded by the VRP, but hopefully that will be match funded over time by local authorities, youth services, third sector. If we can get it right, then we can go back to government and say, not only should you fund us, but you should fund us to deliver exactly what we've started to develop because we think it's working, and these are the metrics that we can report against, these are the outcomes that we can demonstrate. So we're trying to be on the front foot and trying to show that leadership so we get the funding. There will be 10 pots of money for youthful pilots nationally, and again we're running now so that we can start to say we're ready. We think that maybe Leeds or Kirklees are really good opportunities for you to fund that. So we're taking all our partners with us. It's a difficult time because obviously we've had to disinvest from a lot of activity that's been funded for a long time. We're having to go on trust that we're doing the right thing when we don't really know what the future holds. So that is a risk, but the opportunities for West Yorkshire are massive if we get it right.
Thank you very much.
Alison, have you any concern that any area that's not improving, working well as much as you would like to see it working?
I think, as has been mentioned here before many times, the cuts to our partners always will undermine our efforts to make the changes that we need to make in our communities, because a lot of the activity that we fund really relies on our partners to match fund or to provide complementary services, and that's been compromised by local authority cuts to youth offending services, and cost of living, all those things that impact families' abilities to cope and live the lives that they want to live is always a risk to us. We are worried that if local authorities continue to be cut on an ongoing basis, that the infrastructure that we will rely on to deliver this new youthful model and be able to identify children at an earliest juncture. So the whole point of Youth Hub is not to work necessarily with children who are already in the criminal justice system. It's about identifying those children who are at risk of entering the criminal justice system. But that means you need a lot of preventative work happening in schools, and you need those trained people in schools, in youth centres, wherever they are, to be able to identify that and not be dealing with the crisis of the person who's already in the criminal justice system. So that is a risk, that if we don't have that capacity to be able to identify those people at an early juncture, that actually more young people will necessarily enter that criminal justice system.
Thank you. Councillor Shazaz.
Thank you, Chair. What is the Mayor doing in terms of preparing for the polarisation of views in our society?
What views? I mean, it's a very big question.
It is. I'll try to be precise.
I think the question...
If I can come in with due respect, as you know, things are getting to a situation where in our society views are becoming extremely extreme. We have the far right, we have the far left, and that's what I meant by polarisation. In West Yorkshire, I think we've done extremely well with regards to the rise that we've had, and for that, on our back. And thank you to the police force and everyone concerned. It was a united effort. But looking to the future, things are looking pretty dismal in terms of the polarisation. People have extreme views on both sides, and we need to be prepared for this. This is what I meant by polarisation.
Thank you. Yes. Clearly, the police have got a job to do, which is about delivering an efficient and effective police force and service to the people of West Yorkshire. They're not political in any way, shape or form. They don't want to be seen to be political. And if the Chief Constable was here, he would tell you he is not political. He is a public servant delivering services to the public. And we need to preserve that. We need to preserve that understanding of policing as here for all and here to serve, regardless of difference, regardless of views. And irrespective of people's views, however extreme they are, people have a right to hold those views. And I will always fight to the death for people to be given the right to hold the views that they hold. Clearly, if they want to enact those views in a way that is illegal or harmful, there might be a role for the police there might be a role for another bit of society there. But we have to work to tolerate, it's not policing, we as a society have to create a space where people are allowed to have their views, and we have an acceptance that we don't all have to agree to go on in this world. But it's about how we behave with each other, isn't it? And how we allow each other to work, play, live the lives that we're supposed to live without hindrance. From a perspective of the Mayor, she has got an inclusivity champion, Fatima Khan Shah, who works across various sectors, health, faith, education. She was at Carers Conference the other day. She works across the whole of West Yorkshire, meeting different groups, different people to talk about community cohesion, to talk about how the Mayor can impact positively on their ability to live a life free from fear, free from crime, free from harm. And then she feeds back her findings and the feedback that the public have given her to the Mayor, so that then informs thinking and planning her strategies. The police and crime plan, for example, clearly has some of those thoughts embedded when it comes to, for example, the work with men and boys, because that was a really strongly held view. The men and boys are victims, and we needed to have that embedded in our plan, and so it is embedded in our plan. I think that the world is a scary place, depending on which side of the fence you are on a given day, because it changes every day. We all have to be tolerant, respect each other's right to have different views, and we just need to combat misinformation with the facts and the timely information that we've got access to. I was in an Association of Police and Crime Commissioners session this week, and we had a session on misinformation, and we all agreed that as Deputy Mayors, PCC's mayors, our role is to put good communication out there, factual communication out there, and not to allow that chasm of, to be there, so that can be filled by people who mean us harm. In schools, of course, I've been reminded that West Yorkshire Police have got the POLED programme, which they're now selling to other forces because it's such a brilliant product. So that's really good, and the police are getting those factual messages out there and helping young people to work out for themselves what they think and feel, and hopefully come to the right conclusions. But we've all got a job to do in creating a safe place. Anyone can think anything they want to think. We've got a right to have our views, but we have also got the responsibility to behave in a way that creates safety for everybody.
Chair, thank you for that. I think what I meant is harder, which is, what if the situation leads in terms of illegal activity, i.e. towards violence, those views? Are we prepared as a force for that eventuality?
I mean, West Yorkshire Police has got really good processes in place for testing the current climate. So, for example, they've got daily trackers for things like hate crime. They feed into a national process that works out how hate crime is impacting nationally. So I sit on a gold group, a hate crime gold group, and so, for example, during the last 2 years, we've had lots and lots of information about anti-Semitism. CST come to that meeting, feedback the level, the increase of hate crime towards Jewish people, but we've also had Tel Mama, who have come and talked about the growing anti-Semitism and what they've done locally, and also what the forces have done locally and local authorities have done locally. And police are part of those conversations, so that it's like a bit of a weather vane to see what's happening, so that they can prepare. So here in West Yorkshire, we know that we've had hundreds and hundreds of demonstrations for Palestine or Israel, and West Yorkshire Police has had to have cognizance of what's been happening, both at a national but also a local and regional level, so that it has the right resources in place to police marches that might be taking place, not to be biased in any way, shape or form, but so that they can create safety for everyone, those people taking part in those demonstrations, which they're entitled to do, as long as they do it in a legal way, but also for the rest of the public who are going about their daily business. So West Yorkshire Police have very much tapped into those local intelligence portals, but also the national stuff, which helps them to be able to get the right resources in at the right time. And I should just add that we didn't have any riots in Hare Hills, we had disturbances in Hare Hills, just to put that out there.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Are you happy with me?
Extremely happy.
Chair.
Yeah. Thanks.
Chair, if I could just follow up on that. I'm not sure about Calderdale, but in Kirklees, that's evidenced by weekly community detention reports that we get as ward councillors. I'm not sure if that happens across all the local
Yeah, and that's something all for all the different districts too. Yeah, and weekly detention reports, so
yeah.
who they send it to, I don't know.
Yeah, well, we get that as ward members, which is really useful for us.
Yeah, Jim's amazing.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was it. I do have a question as well, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you. Alison, it was just on 7.15, which is the serious violence and duty consultation, which seems like a really useful, important and interesting line of inquiry, and there's only just a couple of sentences. I'm just wondering if you could provide any additional information on what some of the key findings are and what the outcomes are.
Oh, I'd have to go back and read. I have actually had all 5 of them and read them. Yes, it was in the performance report in the last meeting.
Yeah, I thought it might have been.
But off the top of my head, I mean, obviously, it's a serious concern for the people of West Yorkshire, which is why it's the spotlight in the police and crime plan, and why we're doing the strategy, which we are developing the plan around now. Yeah, the detail is in the last performance report.
If members are interested in their report for their area, we can send it out. The VRP and also Anna, who works with me, the VRP have put together looking at, so as part of the police and crime plan, and you'll know we did that big survey and then we did a lot of consultation face-to-face with people. We've taken all of that and then looked at each district. So the VRP have taken the questions that were serious violence in the survey and broken it down for each district to show how they compared with the West Yorkshire and if there were specific things for theirs. And then Anna has done the same for all the other questions in the police and crime plan survey. So if members are interested for their district, we can send you those 2 documents so you can see it for yourself. But the West Yorkshire overview was included in the last performance measures under the serious violence duty, and we'll continue to bring those sort of things to panel as part of the performance measures.
Thank you, Wendy. I'll by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, next question. Jackie.
In terms of VRP, online VRP, I wonder if you've had anything on the fallout around the showing of adolescents and what happens with young people. It's brought lots of discussion, hasn't it, out into society, and how that's impacted around.
Yeah, well, it started a brilliant conversation, which is great. So actually, I've written to the Home Secretary and asked her if she'd like to fund some work here in West Yorkshire as part of the VRP BORG work that we're doing in the Women's Safety Unit. Would she like to fund 2 things? One is an expansion of the Women's Safety Unit, because my concern is that there's been a lot of discussion about CSEA and historical CSEA, and we know that the victims every day, 500,000 according to the NSPCC. And so I've written to her and said, if she was so minded, we could have a pilot here in West Yorkshire where we used all the tactics and the expertise that the specialist unit that West Yorkshire Police set up back in 2015. So what they did is, people don't know this, so it's really good that I'm able to tell them, is when they set up the unit, which is obviously in response to a sad recognition that policing have not served victims of CSEA well, West Yorkshire Police developed a methodology where they identified who potential victims of CSE might be. using things like were they looked after, had they gone missing, had they been excluded, and they visited those people, some of whom were now adults, to ask them if they wanted to report anything. And I think we can use that method, which is why we've been so successful at bringing people to book here in West Yorkshire, because victims did come forward and did then follow through the process, and we've got lots of people prosecuted as a result. I think we should use that for victims today. Not, we've already got great progress for historic victims, but what about victims today? People who might be being victimised now, who might be exploited now. I think we should be looking to prevent worst case scenario happening, or if it's happening, catch those criminals now before they're able to exploit anybody else. So that's one thing that I'll ask if she wanted to fund. And the second is picking up on the adolescents point is I think we should set up a men and boys unit, just like we've got a women and girls unit. This is the Mayor's idea. I think it's a brilliant idea. And work with men and boys who are both at risk of becoming victims, but also are at risk of becoming perpetrators. Because if you look at the data, the number of child sexual abuse and exploitation cases, something like 25 to 30% of all cases is child on child. The group-based abuse that has been in the press so much is 5% of the overall numbers. 25 to 30% is child on child, and we're not doing anything about it. And so what we need to do is prevent these boys, young men, both becoming victims, because we know victims can become perpetrators, but also becoming perpetrators and harming other children. And so I've written to her, I've asked her if she'd like to fund these two ideas that we've got here in West Yorkshire. I'm waiting there.
I've heard about it.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a general comment, really. I think there's a lot of work going on with the SVP. But my question is around the impact on the Integrated Care Board, which clearly under huge pressure with their restructuring of the NHS, and I mean they're being tasked with a 50% reduction in their board figures budget, which is going to have an implication on this, even if, you know, even in the short term. I don't think that happens until the distraction for them alone. And they're quite a significant part, aren't they, in this clearly. And there's been a lot of good work done with the navigator system.
Yeah,
and that's some
absolutely.
very good results out of it. So it's really kind of a general comment about, you know, how are you concerned about it and what mitigation you might be able to put in place to maintain that kind of level of partnership working that you've had with them.
Yeah, thanks. Again, really good question. So we rely on the ICB and health in two main ways. One is through the Navigator project, as you've described, and we were in negotiations with them for them to pick up the funding and hopefully continue to deliver the Navigator schemes using their own budgets, because obviously we've tested the theory, we've proved that the theory works, and we felt that it was a health activity that they should be funding. We were having some really good conversations, and then obviously the cuts came. So we are now in a situation where we're having to fund for this next year. Well, we hopefully come up with a plan with them. Do they fund half of it? Do they fund all of it? What do we do? Because the money that we've got, we know that we're going to be called upon to do more and more of the prevention partnerships type work and the youth hubs type work. And we wanted to be able to reinvest that money that we're currently putting into NHS, into that new world that I've already described. So, yeah, that's a risk, and we're talking about that. The second area is the adversity, trauma and resilience work, which I'm pleased to say is a partnership between ICB and the VRP. So the ICB have given us some brilliant resources in the form of Emmeline Irving, which they are still giving us, which is great, and we fund the work that she's undertaking across West Yorkshire to the tune of £90,000. So it was 100, we've cut it by 10,000, but she's still getting that £90,000, and that's about bringing that trauma-informed practice to partners, to the criminal justice system, but other wider partners, because we want to embed that trauma-informed approach as far and wide as possible. So for this next 12 months, we're able to continue that work. I've already had a meeting with Em and with Lee about 10 days ago to cement that partnership and agree what we're going to be doing for the next 12 months. So that's in hand. But obviously, medium to longer term, we don't know what the future's going to hold.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Answer? No? Thank you. Should we move on to item 7, response? Mayor response?
Yeah, thank you. Just to report back that the Mayor Safe Communities Fund Grant Round 7 Awards ceremony took place. We gave out £1 million to 58 organisations. The biggest award was £80,000. I think that went to Calderdale, to a partnership in Calderdale. So some brilliant stuff happening. Some of those partnerships are going to be working alongside police to deliver the clear hole build arrangements. So really exciting 12-month period where we can find out what those organisations are doing. This year, we should have written to all local councillors to tell you if something was being funded in your ward. So that was something that Sharon was going to do. So I'll chase up to make sure that she's done that so that you know if something's happening in your ward. On Wednesday the 26th of March, we welcomed the Children's Commissioner for England to our offices to talk about the child first work that we're doing that was talked about in the VIP report. We talked about how we developed the framework with 455 children and how we were putting what they told us into practice. It was really helpful conversation, and we've agreed a few ways that we can start working together. So, for example, she's doing a lot of work in young offender institutions. So we're going to look at how we can work more closely together to help her deliver her outcomes too. So that was great. This afternoon, the Mayor and I will be attending a VOG roundtable event. We've invited all West Yorkshire's MPs to a meeting with VOG delivery partners, predominantly the 3 rape crises across West Yorkshire. They asked us for this meeting, the rape crises wanted to be part of the conversation about how the government is going to deliver the 50% reduction in VOG crimes over 10 years. And so we facilitated this roundtable and hopefully we're going to get some good feedback, and the sector will be able to talk about some of the challenges they're facing, but also celebrate some of the great work that they're doing, because they are amazing. And finally, we just wanted to mark the death of another young person on the streets of West Yorkshire. Ahmad Mamdou Al-Ibrahim was stabbed to death in Huddersfield on Thursday the 3rd of April. It's another life lost, and it absolutely reinforces the Mayor's decision to focus on serious violence. So that's it from me.
Are there any questions to answer? Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Alison, there have been some reports in the media over recent days about issues relating to recruitment within West Yorkshire Police, and as a panel we'd be interested to know what response. We've obviously seen the response on the police website, but really to take your view on what the situation and on what's happening currently.
Yeah, thanks for that and the opportunity to respond. Clearly, it is not as being described. So, as we know here in West Yorkshire, the panel has been really focused on holding the police to account for recruiting a diverse police force. It's one of the things you asked me about, one of the things I asked the police about. I did it when I was chair of the panel. It's been a long-standing piece of work, and when John Robbins was the deputy chief constable, he led this area of work on behalf of West Yorkshire Police. And during that time, they did some research into why black people don't apply for jobs with West Yorkshire Police. I mean, there are lots of reasons, which I won't bore you with, but one of them was that the access to the recruitment process and the window was quite narrow. And so what they decided to do years ago, we're talking probably 8-9 years ago, was have an open window for black minority ethnic applicants that was 24/7, 365 days a year. But that does not mean to say that they get any advantage over any other candidate, because obviously people can apply, their applications are dealt with to a certain level and then held until there's a formal opening of the recruitment window, at which point anyone people can apply, and then all the applications are dealt with and interviews take place. There's no limit on the number of people being interviewed, so if there was a limit, that would be problematic. But there isn't a limit. West Yorkshire interviews everybody who passes the threshold, and the best people for the job get the job. And it's quite clear that here in West Yorkshire, 77% of West Yorkshire's communities are white British. And yet, when we had the Uplift programme and we recruited over 1,150 police officers, 82% of applicants who were successful were white British. So there is no discrimination. The facts are very clear. There is no discrimination. But what happened is West Yorkshire were able to attract a higher number of applicants from BME backgrounds than they'd ever attracted before. But it was capped at 18% when the census tells us that 23% of the population are black, minority, ethnic. So it improved the picture. It did not resolve the underlying issues with underrepresentation. When Robert Peel set up policing over 200 years ago, he based policing on these things called Peelian principles. And one of those Peelian principles are the public are the police are the public. I.e., when the public look at the police force, they see themselves reflected. So even 200 years ago, Sir Robert Peel understood that representation was very important for that trust and confidence of the public and that policing by consent. And so West Yorkshire Police espouse that Peelian principle, which Tracy and I support. We think that West Yorkshire Police should do everything they can that is legal to increase the number of BME officers here in West Yorkshire. And just to put it into some context, there are 29 Black African and Caribbean officers employed by West Yorkshire Police. Shall I say that number again? 29 Black African and Caribbean officers who are employed by West Yorkshire Police. That is out of just under 6,300 people. There is no discrimination happening in West Yorkshire. The communication around what they're doing and why they're doing it, obviously we work hard to get that communication out there and improve, but when you've got bad actors who want to make a point, going back to your point, the devil makes work for idle hands, as my old mother would have said. West Yorkshire Police welcomes all applicants for jobs here in West Yorkshire. We have some amazing officers, and our white British officers are as amazing as our black, minority, Asian and other ethnic minority officers. There is no distinction here, but we want to be fair, we want to be seen to be fair, and Tracy and I 100% back West Yorkshire Police in everything they are doing to create that fair force that is representative of the people of West Yorkshire.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just follow up on that point? Because as you say, Alison, this panel, well, for as long as I've been involved, this is not as long as other members, but I know how front and centre of our minds as a panel has been to make sure that our police force reflects our community. And I think what you've given us and what we were looking for is the reassurance that we are doing the right things and not discriminating, but giving every opportunity to make that force reflect the community that it serves. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alison. Yeah. Any other comments on this? No? Yeah. Item 8, public key decisions. As I mentioned, if you look at the website, everything should be on the website. I think Trevor about this thing and this.
Yeah, thanks. It was just a comment really around when I was reading through it around the criteria on this, whether it's changed over the years. I don't know. It seems you've got some relatively minor amounts in there, and we've always kind of had the big serious funding proposals, documents, decisions. It's just something whether, I don't think it's been clearly defined what should and shouldn't be in there. But there seems to be, I think last time as well as this time, there were a couple of smaller amounts in there, which to me seem to be significant public interest.
We've had some change in our legal leadership at WICA, and of course Rob Forrest is our new head of policing and crime. So maybe they've just taken a view that some things that could and should have come didn't, and so they've included those. Maybe they've got the threshold wrong, so we'll go back and have a look. You know, obviously we want to be totally transparent and everything that we agree we want you to see. So we'll go back and have a look and make sure that you're getting everything that you need to get, including the bigger stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just, I suppose it's the other way around. The bigger stuff does tend to come through.
Yeah, it's some small things.
Is the smaller stuff relevant to go in there? And just an observation, I think there's 2 points in there that are duplicated.
It's duplicated, yeah. This one.
But in that, it doesn't actually say what the decision is. It's a decision to seek approval.
Yeah, and we did, so that's the local community safety partnerships want us to do this survey, you know, the satisfaction, the confidence service. So we're going out to tender on that, so that has happened.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Item 9, action plan. Again, I think Jovan needs to come in. Jovan, did you have an action plan?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, It was just to pick up on the training completion rate information. I think we were expecting it to be in this report today.
Yeah, and that was the thing that I spoke to Osman Khan about, and they'd just forgotten to do it, so they're going to do it.
Okay. Is it possible we can have that outside the meeting because of the dates?
Yeah,
We'll be until June.
we'll pursue that. Yeah, we'll
It was asked
pursue
for
that.
in July, so it'd be nice to close.
I think it was just a human error, so we'll pick that up.
Okay. And members are happy with its progress so far? Okay, lovely, thank you. Forward agenda plan. Samantha?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add, sorry. Nothing to add. Complaints, we have no complaints. So this takes us down to any other business. Any other business? Can I say thank members for, this is our last week of the working year, so I want to thank all members for your contribution in the committee so far, and officers to provide us with the information. Thank you for the work you are doing, and to our members. Also, we are back. I'm just going to put this bit in first. Next meeting, date and time will be the 13th of June, which will be the AGM. So, I'm part of another business, and we talk about officers. We've got an amazing officer who's leaving us today, Samantha. I've known Samantha, worked with her for 2 years, and Samantha's just been my guardian angel through this. I don't know Samantha as long as some of the members who has been here, so I'm going to hand over to Joe to say words, something of Samantha, who has been in Samantha for ages.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of everybody on the panel and other members who, during the course of our work as the Police and Crime Panel over the last nearly 13 years, I just want to thank Sam for all her hard work, dedication, her interest and enthusiasm in this subject, and her support in ensuring that the panel has worked effectively and efficiently and been able, I hope, to do the role that we're all being appointed for. So thank you very much, Sam. You will be greatly missed, and we are very grateful for all the officers' support that we've received.
Are there any other members, I'm going to make you blush, are there any other members who would like to say, who has been with Samantha, officers, whoever's?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the comments that have been made. Obviously, we've worked together since the beginning, Sam, when we were in shadow form, and you were an amazing support to me in the chair role. And I'm just really sorry that you're going. You're escaping. I wish I were coming with you.
Thank you. Samantha, we really appreciate you, and thank you so much for what you have done for the committee. I've been told that you have set it up and you take it on this journey, and we'd like to say thank you again, all members, and we wish you all the best in whatever you decide to do anytime and try. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really
We also have another member who is believing this is Liam. Liam, this will be your last day today as well. But I've been told you're not going too far. You'll still be around, but I don't think we'll be seeing you in the audience. We'll keep watching like Samantha does. So thank you for the work that you've put in and the guidance. Thank you. So can I take this opportunity to say the meeting is closed and we'll see who's coming back next June?
Yeah.